Hi everyone, my name is Cynthia. Let's talk books, and today I am here with one of my many best of lists. When I sat down to create a list of the best books I had read in 2020, I realized I read a lot of really great books, and so I ended up dividing them into categories. So I will have a best of just general fiction. I would have a video on best in fiction, middle grade, and YA categories, and a best in romance, then a best in kind of just general nonfiction. Today, I want to talk about the best books I read in nonfiction history. I read a lot of nonfiction. Okay, I read a lot of nonfiction, specifically in history, because that's part of my job. I'm a professor, and so in order to stay current in my field, I need to be reading the latest books that are being published and all of that. So I do read a lot of historical nonfiction. But I have been reading a lot of more popular nonfiction lately, and so that will be like the next video. For now, let's talk about the best works of history that I read in 2020. And I will start with The Five by Hallie Rubenhold. This is the Untold Lives of the Women Killed by Jack the Ripper. And I really, really enjoyed this book. And in fact, I am going to teach it this coming semester when I teach my history of violence course, because oftentimes, the public is fascinated. A lot of us are fascinated by serial killers. True crime is a huge industry, and we mostly focus on these killers, not on their victims. And Rubenhold actually focuses on the victims and discovered something that was very obvious, was right there for everyone to see, but had not been talked about by anybody else, and that is the fact that the women that Jack the Ripper killed were not prostitutes. There were some that had engaged in casual prostitution, because it wasn't not everybody who engaged in the sex trade did it for all of their lives. Sometimes women had periods of time in which they needed money and they would engage in it and then kind of not, and then stop. And so there's evidence that one, maybe two of the women might have done that, but they were not all prostitutes, and for some of them there's no evidence that they ever engaged in prostitution. And that really reshapes the way we tell the story of these murders. And I really loved that this is kind of a feminist historical account of these murders, in which the killer doesn't matter as much. What matters is the lives of these women, and how looking at their lives can help us understand this period in history. So I'm going to be teaching that one, and I'm really excited for it. I should actually mention that Hallie Rubenhold came to the Rip Bodice when she was doing a tour of the book, and she did sign my copy. She also signed, I bought several copies of it, of the book, and that she also signed, and I gave away to students, and so that was a really great moment for me. The next book that I read, and it was one of the best history books that I read in 2020, was They Were Her Property: White Women as Slave Owners in the American South by Stephanie E. Jones Rogers. So this is a book that is really great for people who don't usually read nonfiction, because even though it's written by a historian and it's a great work of history, I think it's very accessible to a wider audience. Same for The Five, by the way. If you don't usually read nonfiction, if you don't read history nonfiction, but you like true crime and all of that, you will like The Five. They Were Her Property is about white women who were slaveholders in the American South. A lot of times historians had ignored female slave owners and focused on the male slave owners, because the American South was and is in a patriarchal society, and so they would just dismiss these female owners as not important, as having as much power as the men. And yes, there was a hierarchy. Men were at the top, but white women were right below the white men, and that gave them a lot of power over black bodies in a system of slavery, and the history is just amazing, so well done, so well written, incredibly accessible to a wider audience. I'm in awe of what Jones Rogers did with this book. It was just freaking fantastic. Yeah. Like, I cannot say enough good things, and I've seen a few other people read it and really enjoy it, so I know that it's not just me that I can recommend it without any hesitation. The next book that I will talk about, and this is not in any particular order, by the way. I thought when I get to more of the other videos, I will do like a list of like the best. These were all good books, but I will put them in some kind of order. This one I just could not. These are all enjoyable, and it's more about what topics would interest you, whether you pick them up or not. This next book is Contested Bodies, Pregnancy, Childrearing, and Slavery in Jamaica by Sasha Turner. This one, in some areas, can be a bit more academic, so I would recommend this book more for people who have read more nonfiction and would be comfortable with it and are not going to be too scared of the more academic elements of it. Academically, it is just wow. A lot of it is a little more accessible, though, and it has to do with the way child rearing functioned in a system of slavery when, slave owners saw black bodies as cheap. Owning slavery to slave owners was cheap labor, right? And as a result, they did not seek to protect black bodies at all. Once the slave trade ended, because it didn't legally end, child reproduction becomes much more important. So black female bodies were important because they could reproduce. The problem was that the system of slavery was incredibly harsh on bodies, and on female bodies it meant that reproduction was like not happening in numbers that would make slavery self-sustaining on its own in every part of the world. And so it deals with the way in which abolitionists try to use that to reform a system of slavery and to advocate for the abolition of slavery. And then she talks about how it worked and how the different interests clashed, right? The interest of the black women clashed with the interest of the slave owners and with the abolitionists engaged in it. So these were three different interests and were all clashing because they all had very different interests in it. Just fascinating, really great work of history. I taught a chapter in it, I think, from it. I think it is very readable. The next book I want to talk about is Reproduction on the Reservation, Pregnancy, Childbirth, and Colonialism in the Long 20th Century by Brianna Theobald. This is a book set in the U.S., dealing primarily with the Crow Reservation up in Montana, and dealing with how reproduction shifted on the reservation because of American colonialism, and then how a government-run hospital there sought to change the way that the community and the way that child rearing and giving birth functioned in the Crow community. It did change things, and then how Crow women themselves interacted with doctors, with nurses, with the state, and with each other. This is a really great, very accessible book, great for a wider audience. I think the first chapter is probably the hardest. I had my honor students read that chapter, and they all did really great with it. And for most of them, it was history they had not ever even heard about. And so it's really important history that I think some of you will be very interested in. Oh, the next book, oof. Okay, if I had to pick a favorite in this list, it would probably be this one. This is Venus Noire, Black Women and Colonial Fantasies in 19th Century France by Robin Mitchell. I will leave the dedicated video I did on this book down below, so I will try to keep my comments here brief. This is set in 19th century France, looking at three women in particular. who were very famous during their time, right? So we have Sarah Bartman, Jane Duval, and Venus Noire. So these were Black women that were very famous in France. Some of them like in Britain as well. But the way they captured the French imagination, how little we have of them, like their lives through their own eyes. We have almost none of that, and yet they were very famous during their times, usually through their relationships with French men and with the public. And so Mitchell really interrogates then how a meaning of Frenchness gets defined through these Black bodies. It's such an amazing work of history. It's not very long. It's written so extremely well. I really, really highly recommend this. Next time I teach any class dealing with these topics, I'm itching to teach that book. I just haven't been able to make it fit with the classes that I've been assigned to teach lately. The next two books are also amazing works of history. This one is Before Trans, 3 Gender Stories from 19th Century France by Rachel Mesch. I talked about this. Did I do a dedicated review video to this? I think I did, and I'll leave it down below. So this is another book set in 19th century France, dealing with another 3 women. This time we have Jane de la Foy, Rachilde, and Marthe de Montifoux. And these 3 women, the author and then I myself have chosen to call them women and to use female pronouns, despite the fact that they really tested the boundaries of gender identity in the 19th century. In the 19th century, the word transgender was not used, and so these individuals didn't have the ability to define their gender identity more fluidly. If they had this vocabulary, they would have probably not used male or well, some of them might have. They might have used different vocabulary, is what I'm trying to say. But it's also, we can't impose our vocabulary on them because we don't know exactly what they would have chosen. They might have been non-binary. They might have chosen transgender. They might have used just male pronouns. All 3, I believe. One thing they have in common was that they wore pants at a time in which wearing pants, for women to wear pants was illegal. I think one of them had a pants permit. You could, as a woman, you could wear pants if you got a pants permit. And one of them had it, and it was, Mesch really investigates why her gender nonconformity was more accepted than that of the other 2 women, and it had to do with colonialism. So wonderful book. Another one that I can't wait to use in a class, especially I'm thinking of a class I sometimes teach called Gender and Sex in History. I think that's where I want to use that one. This next book, I also can't wait to teach. This is the Turnaway study, 10 years, 1,000 women and the consequences of having or being denied an abortion. I'll link a video I have talking in more detail about this book down below, but the short version is that there was a study done, the first full scientific done study of individuals that have been denied abortions and then the effects of an abortion on women. There's a few critical areas or things to criticize about the way the study was conducted that I speak about in the video I did on this book, but it really is a great resource. It really tests what you think you know, assumptions people make about women who get abortions and women that are denied abortions. The long and the short of it is that there are no long-term negative effects from having an abortion. Not in terms of physical health, not in terms of mental health, that people generally don't regret them, that women who are anti-abortion get abortions. So lots and lots of interesting, important information in this book. but obviously, like, each of these books deals with a different topics. You've noticed, hopefully, that a lot of them deal with kind of the topic of reproduction history, because that's one of my areas of expertise, and I really focused on reading on the topic more widely. But again, I think you can't go wrong picking any of these books. You might not love them as much as I did, but I can guarantee that you will find something of value and get something of value from each and every single one of these books. That's what the promise I make when I make these lists, that, you know, they might not work in the same way that they worked for me, but that they are good books, and that you will get something from the books that I have in these lists. So you can also tell, I have a lot to say on all of these topics and all of these books. So feel free to leave any questions that you might have on any of these books or the topics down below. I would be happy to, you know, answer questions. I'd also be happy to talk about any of these books down below. If you've read them, for sure, let me know. And thank you for watching this video. I will see you in the next one. Bye.